few days ago, we talked about Modern Warfare multiplayer gameplay, and that video admittedly was pre-recorded. I was on a camping trip with some friends whenever that video dropped, so I talked about my experiences with the 2v2 game mode from back in May whenever I was out there for a press event and got a little bit of hands-on time with 2v2. But today I wanted to talk about some of the community reaction and questions that I've seen proposed to not only me, but also out there in the general public. And as a result, maybe give a little more clarity than before on some of the things we actually saw out of that 2v2 gameplay debut. Now, granted, we're still a bit off from the worldwide reveal on the 1st of August, so a lot of these questions we have will probably be answered definitively by then, but for the time being, I wanted to present what I could for what I know and to the parameters of what I'm legally allowed to say and discuss so far with you today. I know by doing this, it will probably present even more questions, so for the basis of that, feel free to drop a comment, but also make sure you follow me over on Twitter and Instagram. That's probably where we can take the discussion next and continue in a more immediate fashion with those answers, again, to the extent that I can legally mention, or if I even know the answers. I'm sure there's probably some stuff that I actually just don't know about. But also, if you want to see more Modern Warfare content, please do let me know in the comments. I'm incredibly excited for this game, and with Black Ops 4 being a bit, lackluster at the moment. If you're cool with me talking about any specific topic you want to see or just in general, let me know in the comments. But also, as we ramp up towards the reveal, we'll be covering literally everything here that you'll need to know, so make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. There's a bit of you that are not, so if you want informed, make sure you do. But anyways, let's get into it. The two biggest things that I've seen addressed, or at least in community reactions, are that of the movement itself and also the graphics. So those are the two key lead-off things here that I want to talk about. The biggest thing, firstly, being is the gameplay itself. Does it play in a clunky manner? Is the movement clunky in any sort of way? One thing that I will say is that the animations are different. That's probably the best way to encompass this. I don't know if I necessarily want to say it's clunky. It's just different. The best way that I can describe this on how it's actually toned from a core perspective of the fundamental gameplay is that your movements are contingent on your character's body, not the weapon being the point of animation like before, whereas if you were to say look left, right, up, or down, you are looking as if your weapon was the point of transition. This time it's a little bit different in Modern Warfare. Your character's core body, so probably around the torso, is the main point of those pivots and transitions, and the extremities have a very, very minimal delay to follow, but it's also a noticeable delay. It's something you will feel, and it sort of creates a sway in a sense, where it seems like there's that slight delay from transitioning and getting your gun up that might not have been there in the past. It's not necessarily clunky, it's just different than what we're used to. What I will say is that it's definitely different from a COD standard feel, but it's also something that's very easy to overcome and adapt to very, very quickly. I know that it's not maybe a popular opinion with many of you here, but I've raved about manual healing in the past with Black Ops 4 for various reasons, but the one point that I recall is that in one area in particular, this is very much so in the same boat. When it was first shown off at the reveal event of Black Ops 4 last May, it felt weird as hell at first, but upon match 2 or 3, it literally felt natural at that point. I even came back from that reveal event to play World War II, and I only got about 3 or 4 matches of Black Ops 4 at that event. I found myself throwing stuns instead of healing in regular matches in World War II, so it stayed like that where I felt naturally connected to healing manually for a good while after I even got back from that event and I was playing a different game. This is the exact same case that I feel like with movement and animations. It feels weird for about a game or two, but then you'll adjust really quickly and you feel the flow of it, and it's not a hindrance anymore. And truthfully, that may sound very weird, but I actually kind of admire the boldness from Infinity Ward to change it up like this, with this new engine and offering a different mechanic for how this works, when so much has been in the vein of copy and paste year over year for not necessarily their studio, but the franchise as a whole. So I'm cool with a little change, especially, like I said, something that I can guarantee you'll adjust to insanely fast. So to answer that question in a blunt manner, is Modern Warfare clunky? From what I felt when I played, wasn't so much clunky, just different. Graphically, I'm gonna be honest with you, I've seen pretty much every end of the spectrum here at this. I've seen a wide range of reactions from these graphics look great to these graphics look terrible. And for my particular playthrough, I'll say that those that really enjoyed it, you're gonna be even more wowed, but for those that were skeptics, there are a few things you need to take in mind. From what I did, it looked absolutely fantastic from my playthroughs. But what we are shown off, I don't think the public has seen yet a greatly accurate depiction of what's to come. What you have to bear in mind are a couple of different things. First off, most of these streams I saw were at 900p, so that was something that was capped at that resolution, and so therefore that's the best you can actually see. And plus, we end up having to remember that too, there's a ton of compression when streaming, and that image is not crystal clear when it's streamed at, say, a 6K bit rate. That's only a fraction of the lossless and raw file output. It seems like we might have some raw footage coming out sometime soon based off of what Joel Emsley from Infinity Ward has mentioned, but even for comparison, you take a screenshot from the streamed matches and then put it side by side with simply my 1080p footage from Black Ops 4 and my capture device, not even a 4K res screenshot, and you'll see the difference is miles apart. Plus, again, that takes into account that there is compression on YouTube. Motion blur is also something that may have messed with some of the graphics you may see, and that's going to be something that distorts the image, but at the cost of trying to have a more lifelike feel. But it's also something that's been confirmed there are two settings coming for motion blur, in which it's one for weapon and one for environments. So there's a lot of things that take away from that, going from raw gameplay that was on the monitors the players were playing on to what the public ended up seeing at that very end product. A to B had a lot of distortion along the way. Full disclosure, I have absolutely no idea what monitors we were playing on at the time in May, or the resolution on them or anything like that, but the picture quality was absolutely pristine. I want to say it was the Asus ROG monitors, probably like the 1440p ones with the 1 millisecond response time and 165 hertz refresh rate. So that output is naturally showing off the brilliance of the graphics and is obviously at 1440p, higher than what you'll see in most YouTube videos, even at 1080-60. So in that capacity, maybe what I saw was something that was way better than the average gamer will ever experience, but it looked absolutely fantastic for my playthrough out of it. I also don't fully remember if we were playing on PS4 Pros, base PS4s, or dev kits. I do think I remember hearing talk of them being base PS4s, if my memory serves me well enough, which, if that's the case, is astounding because, again, there was so much graphical depth to it, so much reflection, so much going on in the world, and it looked great. But the one thing that, graphically talking about it, I do want to make sure that is reiterated is that I think that what you saw streamed and what you'll see anywhere else on YouTube, Twitch, or elsewhere, up until you get your hands on feel with it, will always have that cap in quality, whether that be a 900p stream or even the compression that's naturally applied to even 4K videos on YouTube. I think that we'll still have those chances to be wowed, but I think that come whenever you get your hands on it, whether there's a beta or not, I have honestly no clue, or at the launch of the game, I think that once you pop it in your disc tray, it will be something that you are a little bit wowed by the quality. It's definitely better, I think, than Black Ops 4, but from what is out there in the general public, I think it's too early to tell of if it's good, bad, or great, or terrible. But kind of general reactions and generalities of the next Call of Duty out of the way, let's talk about some more specific things. We know that weapon quantity is seemingly the most that we'll see at launch. Some leaks indicate that. I think there's some even different press events and media that some of the developers have mentioned that at, but we've seen things simply from the 2v2 that give a nice indication as to some of the weapons coming. Just from that 2v2 event of a couple of matches streamed, we saw the FR556 rifle, which is very similar to the FAMAS, probably just for licensing reasons, the AUG, which is a rifle, the MP5, the MP7, which are SMGs, the AX50, which is a sniper, the M14, which is a sniper, and the L86A2 and M91 LMGs, with the secondaries of the M19, the 50GS, which is the Desert Eagle pistol, the 725 shotgun, the Model 680 shotgun, and the RPG-7 launcher. Now, 13 weapons doesn't seem like a whole lot, but now we're going into that territory again. Legally, we can't go into many details, but I would not let this be any indication at all to the total number. It was said over and over and over again that 2v2 was a very, 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 very small fraction of what's to come, and that still falls in line with that. Hit detection is also something I've seen much discussion of, and there's many clips being shown out there that specifically the one clip of Jacker Courage JD ended up using a sniper to get a final kill, and it became the kill cam for that round, in which that's the clipped portion here of this. Kill cams are next to never accurate. Little pop-up note, this next little 30 seconds of dialogue or so was added in editing. The rest of this was recorded a day or two ago at this point, but my good friend Exclusive Ace actually just put out a video today about this. I'll leave a link down there in the description below talking about it in full, but he breaks it down fully. Kill cams are never accurate based on simply the data they collect versus the actual refresh rate in game. A kill cam is multiple different perspectives at a lower refresh rate, all chucked into one to make a semi-accurate depiction to showcase what happened. But oftentimes it ends up leading to what you see in that clip, where it ends up showcasing that the shot's well above the player, even though the kill was granted. Though in real time, it is something that the shot actually does hit. One thing we had to consider is that Infinity Ward, above all else, actually does have a decent track record with the hit detection. I think that though, even given the recent years of Infinity Ward's titles of Infinite Warfare and Ghosts, they may not have been thematically and gameplay wise the most enthusiastic among the player base, but I think that one shining feature out of that and all their titles is the hit detection itself. So I wouldn't get too worried about this just yet, kind of want to address it in that manner. But then other things that we saw out of this 2v2 demo was that of recoil. It seemed pretty high, and I can't really say, not necessarily legally, but I genuinely don't know or don't remember if it was said or not during our press event back in May. It kind of looked like there was predictive recoil here at this one, but again, I have no definitive information on that one to give you a definitive yes or no, even though I'd like to. But recoil definitely does look high, and that's going to be a big selling point and differentiating point between this game and other games within the Call of Duty universe. They're trying to base a lot of Modern Warfare off of realism, and so therefore recoil might be one of those things come MP that we'll have to readjust very similarly to that mechanics and movement, in which it might not be something that after a little bit of playtime will be something we really are thrown off by, but it will be something that is a little bit of a road bump and a hurdle to get adjusted to whenever we first jump in. One thing though that was shown off a little bit here within this gameplay itself, and one thing that we were told at this briefing that did relate to 2v2, was simply some core gameplay mechanics of bracing, mounting, and leaning. Now, bracing and mounting are very similar to each other, in which it cuts down on the recoil and gives you a little bit more stability. So very much so similar to if you were holding a real rifle up in a standing position, or if you had it, say, on a bipod on a bench at a range. You're definitely going to see less recoil whenever it's mounted or braced on something, and that's another mechanic you'll be able to introduce within the game itself. Leaning is also something I saw a little bit of concern about within the community, and I'll be totally honest with you, even though it was shown off a little bit within that 2v2 stuff, I don't think that through my entire time of that 2v2 gameplay, I saw anybody using that, or using it also in a way that could have given them an advantage. I know that Ghost got a lot of flack pre-release because they introduced leaning, but even for that entirety of that year, I don't recall really being killed by somebody leaning all that much. There was pre-release of Ghosts a bug that I think was either fixed with a day one patch or shortly thereafter, in which the leaning actually broke the character model, where the player leaning could see around the corner, but then from the player downrange's perspective, they weren't around the wall at all. That's one thing that did come from leaning as a little bit of a bug, but I can't imagine that makes it in. I feel like that's something that's definitely been learned from at this point. But again, I'm not really too necessarily worried about leaning, but it is a feature that is going to be returning. The final thing I want to talk about here and address from community reactions is that of a little tiptoeing around something, the subject of manual healing versus auto healing, because the question arises from something that was shown off in 2v2, but it starts to go over into that wall of I can't talk about it just yet, but which one is it? Because we saw a little bit of both within the 2v2 gameplay, and we'll of course have a full definitive answer here come August 1st in the MP reveal. But the only thing that I can say here out of this, and that may be a little clarity, is that notice that it's a 2v2 random spawn here, and notice that the base rule sets of gunfight are predicated around no health regeneration, and then only sometimes you'll have that randomly pop up as something given to all players. I wonder why that is. But anyways, that's where we're going to wrap it up here at this one. I wanted to kind of just talk about some of the community reactions, some questions that I've seen largely out there within the space about Modern Warfare, and having had some hands-on time with it, I felt compelled to give my perspective here on it and maybe clear the air a little bit, add some more clarity to it. So if there's anything in particular that you guys want to talk about further, again, please do follow me over on Twitter and Instagram. We'll talk about that probably a lot more immediately than that of, say, putting up another video talking about other questions. But also make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare and all things Call of Duty in general. There's still stuff for Black Ops 4 coming over the next couple of months, so all that we'll talk about: updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if any of that is you, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, again, we can continue the conversation over there. Links are down there in the description below. But all that said and out of the way, thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.